I pray that pastors that are watching this will support their young people, will support groups, reaching people for Jesus Christ so that they can come and give their heart to the Lord. Amen? That's the whole purpose. That's what we do.
I remember that one of the things that we began to do not long after that is that when the summer would come, we'd take a bunch of young men with us, and we'd turn them into road crew.
That's right.
We'd bring them out, we'd teach them how to run sound, and apprentice to our sound guy. But then they'd do lighting, and you know, this was the 80s, so we were traveling with a big, giant truck full. By that point, the Collage band was long gone. And we were traveling with a big truck full of equipment, and it was the 80s, so it was like massive amounts of amps and stuff on stage and all this lighting. I mean, you lose 5 pounds a night just under being on there, all that lighting. And we had pyrotechnics and all of that. I remember we were in Roanoke, Virginia. We were in Roanoke, Virginia, and we would come out, and there would be this piece of music that would be playing, that we would come out in the dark, and Rick would sit down at the drums, and he'd start into a drum thing that was like a doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. And when he'd do it, there were just strobe lights. They were all on the drums. That was all you were seeing, the booms. Like, it looked like sparks of light because of the smoke. Yeah. And when the lights came on, there was so much smoke. One of them young guys had put so much smoke on the stage that I was about as far as I am to Rick from Keith, and I couldn't see him on stage.
No, couldn't see him.
That was also the night that I was standing next to the pyrotechnics, and they fired them off early, went straight up my back.
His hair was on fire, and Keith, the smoke was out there, and Keith turns around and he said, "Rick, are you back there?" "Yeah, I'm here, Keith, but I can't see anything." And here's what he says to me to comfort me. "Well, I'm getting ready to count it down, brother, so get ready. Here we go." And that was the way that we began that song, right in the middle of all that smoke and fire. Guys, it didn't make any difference what the opposition was that was facing us. We were determined that we were in ministry for the King, and we were going to keep on going, right? And we saw
Yes.
We loved living on the end of the limb. As Pastor Robert, this morning he was talking about it's time to get out of the boat. Well, we didn't have a boat. We lived out on the water. We lived out on the end of the limb. Because that's where the fruit is. And once you start seeing the fruit of God in your life from something like that, you start wanting to get proficient at climbing out on that limb. Once you taste that first sweet apple that's out at the end of that limb, after you hear the limb cracking, it doesn't matter. You know, well, if this thing falls, God's going to get me anyway, so I'm going to go on out there and get that apple. That thing tastes good. Right?
Right.
So, man, that's what it is. The fruit's on the end of the limb. It's never at the tree.
Because lives were at stake.
That's right. That's where it's stayed. And that's what we knew above everything else going in.
Every night. I mean, I remember we'd get that truck loaded up and taken off, and we would talk about the fact, this is important. What we're doing is important. There's going to be people that are going to be in heaven because of what we're doing right now.
Excuse me, Pastor Robert. Would you tell the story about, I don't even know where we were, but we had done a gig in this one town a couple times, and there were great crowds there. And we had just finished doing the gig, and I was looking to just sit down, and because, man, I was exhausted, I was pale. And Brother Robert says, "Hey, Keith, come here for a minute. This is going to bless you." Do you remember that? It was a group of young men, about high school age, and he said, "I want you to hear this." And I went out there against my will, and all these young men started saying, "The last time y'all were here, we gave our hearts to Christ."
Oh, yeah. I can't think of where it was, but it was in railroad cars.
Yeah.
There was a caboose, right?
They had a big caboose. So,
and you walked in through that into the room.
Into this big room. And all those guys that said, you know, we've gotten involved in ministry, and we're leading ministries and doing all this. All of that had happened from the time that we were there to the time we came back the next time.
That's right.
And then hopefully that's the power of what we're doing right now. Those watching online, those that are here tonight. I know there are musicians here. I know there are people here with dreams. I know there are people here that really want to do something for God, but they're facing all the opposition that's in their life. Keith, at the time, was the only single guy It was in the group. And so Keith would take his funding, everything, all his paycheck, he would take his bonuses from the boats, he would take all of it, and he would pour it into sound equipment and pour it into lights. And we would have a malfunction go off on equipment, and Keith would say, I don't know what we're going to do, brothers, but let's just pray, let's just pray. And then all of a sudden, Keith would call us like on Thursday night, and he would say, you know, God just blessed me, somebody just put some money in my hand, and I'm able to go purchase this equipment, and we're able to go out and do what we're called to do. But that is a word for somebody, because you're going to face opposition. You're going to face it, man. That's what ministry is all about. We coined this phrase, when you're dealing with a bunch of stuff, you know, and you feel depressed, and you feel like you're jealous, or you feel like you're envious, whatever you're going through, here's the term, welcome to the ministry, because that's where the rubber meets the road. Amen?
Pastor Clay. That was Pastor Clay.
That's right.
Welcome to the ministry.
Welcome to the ministry.
I remember when I first got in ministry, I'd go to Pastor Clay and I'd call him up and say, oh, I'm dealing with this situation, and I just pour it all out. I'd be in tears. And he'd say, he'd just laugh on the other end. He'd say, welcome to the ministry. You know, that helped me. It helped me. It did something inside of my life. I realized that ministry is not easy. It's hard. And even all those years, we were having fun playing music. And God used something that we really enjoyed to do something for His glory. But it was hard work. It was always hard work. And I remember putting speakers together. Keith and I put a whole series of these speakers together, the 18. Yeah, we were putting those 18 cabinets together, and we were screwing them with a screwdriver. And after the end of all of us over, Keith goes, you know, I just realized I had a power drill. And we were screwing them all in by hand. I had a power screwdriver. So well, that's great news now.
The power of our relationship is, I hope, what you're getting tonight. I hope that you're thinking about your relationships 30 years from where you are now.